Hey, my third grade mathematicians, now that you've had a chance to measure the classroom or measure a room in your home, we want to take a look at some different measurements, okay? So you'll notice when I show you the data of a few of the groups that measured the classroom that all of their measurements are different. So let's take a look at them here, okay? So take a moment and look at the groups and their first measurement. So Kenji, Becky, and Inez measured the classroom 34 feet and 6 inches. Elena and Gil, 31 feet, 5 inches. Oscar and Beatrice, 31 feet, 4 inches. Gina and Chris, 28 feet, 6 inches. And Nancy and Deandra, 30 feet, 4 inches. So they measured the same space, but their measurements are different. So take a moment and think about why are their measurements different. Okay, so just a couple of questions to think about too. Do you think there is one answer to how long that distance is? Do you think there is one answer to how long that distance is? I know we got different measurements, but then we've got to think about why we have different measurements. If you're measuring the same distance from one end of the classroom to the other or one side of the room to the other, that distance is not going to change. So there is one answer of how far or what the distance is of that length or that measurement of that room. So what tool did you use to measure, and do you think everyone used the same tool? Well, we've seen different tools this week. We've seen a ruler. We've seen a yardstick. So it looks like, though, that everyone measured in feet and inches. We didn't have anyone measure in yards. So different tools could have been used, but would that have made a difference in the measurement? So just take a minute and think about what you did when you measured. And think about what someone else might have done differently. So even though we've got different measurements, we know that there is one right distance if you're measuring the same length. But here are some things that could have happened when you were measuring. You could have been placing rulers or yardsticks so they overlap or have gaps between them. So when you're measuring, you want to make sure you continue that measurement without leaving gaps or putting the ruler on top of the previous ruler. We want to make sure that the distance is as precise as possible. Measuring across the room in zigzags or diagonally. So when you're measuring something, you're measuring in a straight line as far as measuring distance or length. Making a mistake in the total calculation or in keeping track of the number of times a ruler or yardstick was used. So making sure your mathematics and your operation, you're using the correct operation and you are being precise in your strategy to find the total. Reading the wrong end of the measuring tool, I have done this. I have measured and then ended up looking at the wrong end, especially when using yardsticks, multiple yardsticks. And then another thing that could have gotten a different measurement is estimating a section of the length that cannot be directly measured. So if there was a desk in the way or a chair that maybe you just sort of looked at, that looks about 12 inches, that looks about a foot, and calculated that in, but it not being exactly a foot. So make sure when you are measuring across the classroom or the room that you're measuring, that you are making sure that you are using the correct measuring tool, that you are not leaving any gaps or overlaps in your measurements, and be as precise as you can with your measuring tools and when you calculate the total distance. Okay? All right, guys, so I know in the coming activities you will be doing a second measurement of the classroom, and we will have that discussion when you do that. But just make sure that you are using measuring tools appropriately and efficiently. And until our next discussion, happy measuring.